family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Oops. I thought it was going to fade. It just went.
We're going to get this one of these days.
We will get this right one of these days. And welcome to the show. This is the Unleashed AF podcast. I actually used the initials this time. Last week, I just let it all rip out. This is the Unleashed AF podcast. I am one of your hosts, Deidre Beecham, Visibility Catalyst. I help women to get their ass out of the closet and get visible and get yourself visible because we need you to heal the world. And my co-host over here is Jenny Battig. Jenny, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, I am Jenny Battig, the inner space engineer who helps my clients and friends and family, when possible, really engineer their inner space, the subconscious, our inner guidance system. I'm all about untapping the superpowers of our subconscious.
Awesome. That's great. And I'm super excited about the podcast this week. I think I'm going to be excited every single week, just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because last week we had Elizabeth Power, and she was fabulous.
And
founder of the she is a hoot. Trauma Informed Academy. And this week we figured what we do is I'm going to interview Jenny this week and talk to her about the leashes that have kept her down. And I'm super excited about, I'm going to do actually a full intro on Jenny in just a moment. But I'm very excited about interviewing Jenny because Jenny was part of a mastermind that we had together a couple of years ago. And she was absolutely very integral in helping me to get rid of some of the leashes that I had going on. And I'll talk more about that next week. But Jenny, let me go ahead and do a quick intro for you. Let me pull this up.
Sure.
Here we are. Jenny. And again, Unleashed AF podcast is all about helping you to get rid of the leashes that are keeping you down and keeping you from being your best and biggest self in the world. Jenny Battig is the owner of Epic Renewal, LLC, and creator of Hypnohuddles, which you can find at hypnohuddle.com. And that's Hypnohuddle with no S.com.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Transition from a decade-long career. Actually, in fact, let me go ahead and put this up. Here we go. Banners. Wow. While we're talking, there we go.
Oh, look at you.
Look at me. So let me finish the intro here. Here we go. Transition from a decade-long career in human factors engineering into hypnotherapy. Now, that's a big transition. I thought I had a big transition, but at least mine was similar in vein. You just changed. That's interesting. With a background in engineering,
left brain to right brain.
with a background in engineering from Wright State University and experience as a volleyball coach, she uses her skills to optimize human system interactions. Her shift to hypnotherapy was spurred by her own positive experiences and the desire to profoundly impact others' well-being. Jenny is now a certified integrative hypnotherapist, focuses on helping coaches tackle issues like smoking, unhealthy habits, phobias, and stress, and is passionate about empowering clients globally as an inner space engineer, which is what I think is awesome and what you do best, to create and sustain fulfilling, healthy lives through the power of the subconscious. So, Jenny, I'm really excited to be interviewing you on Unleashed.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm not sure what leash you're going to talk about, but I'm fascinated by this. What a huge transition from engineering to hypnotherapy. And is that what you're planning on talking about today? If not, I still want to just go there for just a moment, if you don't mind.
Well, I'd like to kind of explain that just because it is kind of part of the intro and understanding how I do or why I do what I do. But I also wanted to talk about, because, hopefully we can all realize that we all have many leashes that we overcome in life. That's kind of, I think, maybe part of why we're living is to figure out how to unleash ourselves from various things, because otherwise it wouldn't be much of a challenge, honestly. So, yeah, the thing about going from engineering into hypnosis, this will become a book someday, I'm sure, because I've told this story so many times that people are like, wow, that's very interesting. So, when I'd gone to college, honestly, I started out majoring in accounting simply because I was good at math and I was told I was meticulous about things. And so being meticulous and good with numbers equals accountant. So that's why I did it. But I got so honestly bored with like my first year of college, doing, I think it was a business math class or something where it was like basically word problems. And it was like, I did this maybe 5 years ago in math. And I just wasn't, I wasn't challenged from that perspective. But when I went to some of the other business classes, it was, economics was talking about the stock market and stuff where I thought, this isn't based on logic. This is almost based on faith that, supply and demand and pricing and buying and selling. And I'm like, this doesn't, like, my brain is logical. Things need to make sense. So I realized I wasn't comfortable in that environment, in that area. And one of the girls on my volleyball team was in human factors engineering. I'd never even heard of it before, didn't even know it was a thing. But as she was explaining it to me, it sounded interesting because, I think I want to talk about later, I've kind of been since birth practically kind of a people pleaser, a fixer, a peacemaker kind of person. So the idea of being able to use logic,
out there can relate with that.
Right. Being able to use logic and engineering to help make people be able to interface with systems or products more easily. I thought, this is a win-win. I didn't even know I could do this for a job. So I got into the human factors engineering. Oh, and this was interesting too. I'd had an honor scholarship that was specific to the business school, but I could get it transferred to engineering. So I had to go talk to the honors department and say, okay, can you, shift my honors scholarship from business to engineering? And they were like, wait, what? Usually we have people that come in and try to do honors engineering and can't cut it, and they want to skip over to business. And I'm like, yeah, business just isn't working for me. I need to move to engineering. And they're like, okay, good luck.
Wow. Yeah.
So I had to kind of convince people it was okay for me to go into engineering in the first place. And, worked in that field and really mostly did user interface type stuff because there's so much software these days that there were way more jobs doing user interface stuff than any other kind of like ergonomics or something like that, other kind of design.
Right.
So did that. Never really saw myself though working for like a big corporation. I just wasn't that kind of person. I wanted it to be more kind of one-on-one or personal touch sort of deal. But I ended up working for GE, which one of the bigger corporations you could ever work for.
Yeah. That didn't work out for you.
Yeah. So, well, when I first got there, it wasn't that it kind of was that much on purpose. I first got there, it was GE Harris. It was a joint venture between General Electric and Harris Corporation, which is down here in Melbourne, Florida. Still a Fortune 500 company, but not as big as GE, obviously. But after I was there about 4 years, I think, GE bought out the Harris part. So there I was in a huge ass corporation that I never intended to be in. But that job ended. Honestly, I was kind of butting heads with management about some things and it just wasn't working out anymore. So about a year later, I was at just Harris, the other side of the fence, and never expected to be there more than 5 years or so. I knew it was a good paying job. I knew I could do the job well, but it just wasn't my passion. So it was more just to make sure I was stable and with my income and things like that. Then while I was at Harris, there was a woman who came and did like a lunch and learn one day, and she was a hypnotherapist. So lunch and learn was just, bring your own lunch and somebody's going to do a presentation in one of our conference rooms and you can learn something that might be beneficial to you as an employee.
Sure.
So she had her own medical practice and left that medical practice to become a hypnotherapist. And I thought,
Really?
what? So I was
Wow.
intrigued. Yeah. And the way she described hypnotherapy to a bunch of engineers, I thought was brilliant. She used a computer analogy. I thought, well, you're speaking their language now. So she said, the conscious part of our minds is sort of like the stuff that we interact with on the desktop, maybe Microsoft
Okay, yeah.
Word
Makes
or the internet or
Right.
whatever. The subconscious is like all the programming that goes on in the background that makes those things work. And I thought,
Yeah, okay. That makes
that's
sense.
what these guys are excited about because they're the ones that write that code.
Mhm.
So they know that's where the real change happens. And it just made so much sense to me that I thought, I really want to try this. I just want to experience it and see if it can work for me. I was skeptical because I thought, I'm very analytical. And like I said earlier, things have to be logical to me. I don't like even just the Wall Street, like stock market was too faith-based for me to really kind of grasp into. So I thought, let me just give it a try and see what happens. And so I did, I think 3 sessions with her. And one of the things I wanted to work on was I'd been a very picky eater growing up. Like I grew up in the Midwest, but I'll tell you what, there were not many vegetables that were going to go through these lips. So it was honestly like I could name the number of vegetables I ate as a kid: corn,
Wow.
lettuce, celery, green beans.
And so this
that's
was able
about
to
it.
change? This was going through hypnotherapy was able to change this for you?
Absolutely. The only thing ever in my life that got me to eat other vegetables was this hypnosis that I went to. And within like a week
Wow.
or something, the way I noticed it was I was going to lunch with some of the guys from work. We went to a Thai place, and like the vegetables on a Thai plate are not corn and green beans and lettuce and celery. So I always just like shoved them to the side, ate my rice, ate my meat, and I was done. But for whatever reason, I want to say it was less than a week after I'd gone in for hypnotherapy. I finished every vegetable on that plate. And I thought, what the hell just happened? So, and even when I went to the hypnotherapy sessions, I wasn't sure at the time, like, did that work? Like, nothing like felt different. I didn't have like sparkles coming over me or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know if that worked or not, but sure enough, next time I had an opportunity, I ate those damn vegetables. And it was like, my mind was blown. So, that experience, kind of fast forward a bit, like a few months after that, I started to work with a personal trainer who was really influential in terms of things being natural and like a whole lifestyle change. He wasn't just about one aspect. Like he wasn't one of those, he was a muscly guy, but he wasn't one of those, just hit the weights as hard as you can and, carb load and whatever. Like he wasn't that kind of way. He was really kind of holistic with his, he gave me nutrition advice, which on several occasions I say, I don't pay you enough to give me nutritional advice. So let me eat what I want to eat. But he didn't do that. He still gave me nutritional advice. But he also gave me spiritual advice, and just, there were so many cool things that we talked about that were more than just in the weight room kind of stuff. And, and that sort of helped. It really just started the ball rolling for a big transformation for me. It helped me to find Unity of Melbourne, which is, a religious, it was my religious home for a while. I haven't been as active there lately, but I really got a lot out of realizing that there were other people that had the same kind of awareness, or were getting the same kind of awareness about just how much power we kind of have within ourselves to tap into, to manifest things in our life, to make life what we want it to be, that kind of thing. And so at one point, as I was talking to him about some of the things he was trying to do in his career, like expand what he was doing, it was way more interesting to me than what I felt I was doing at Harris at that point. And, although people appreciated me there, I'd kind of moved up on the ladder a bit, didn't really want to move up too much, but they got me up there a little higher than what I wanted to. I was working multiple programs. Like I was fully engaged.
Well, you just weren't enjoying your life.
Yeah. It wasn't fulfilling, really.
Yeah.
It fulfilled my bank account, but it didn't fulfill my soul and my heart and what I really wanted to do with my life. So he mentioned to me one time, the trainer, he said, well, he said, you're not passionate about what you do at Harris? And I was like, I don't think passion is a word I would use he's maybe not spent a lot of time around engineers. Passion's not really a word I would use. And so he's like, well, just, you got to figure out what you're passionate about. That's what you do. And I thought, okay. And so I remembered my experience with hypnotherapy. And I remembered a book that I had read a few years before that called The Journey by Brandon Bays, where she talked about, she didn't call it hypnotherapy, but now that I'd experienced it, I'm like, that's the same stuff. She just called it her own thing. She had actually, I don't know how it is to say this officially, but basically cured her own cancer by digging out her own emotional baggage and clearing out the stress and just that negative energy. Her cancer, like the tumor that they had found in her originally was, I want to say like large grapefruit size. After 6 weeks of her trying to do stuff on her own with it, was down to golf ball size. 2 weeks later, it was gone. And that blew my mind at least as much as the idea of me eating vegetables when I'd never really eaten them any before. So
it almost sounds like as you were going along, it sounds like you were kind of being directed down this path, and it probably wasn't as you went along, the leap became less of a big leap.
Yeah, because after just originally reading that book a few years before, there was a thought that came to my mind where, hey, if I could do this for people, because there was a workshop they had, I think in Fort Lauderdale or something, just over a weekend. I went down there and kind of really dove into it, kind of got to practice it, try to help people out. And I thought, this is amazing. But then my little left brain kicked in again and said, wait a minute, nobody's really heard of this stuff. You don't know how to market yourself. Go back to your day job. Stop dreaming.
Oh, isn't that exactly what our brains do though?
Yep.
Immediately tear it down because it's unsafe. It's different. It's new. And so
it's unknown.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Run away.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So it went into the back pocket or the back burner or whatever you want to call it until these other experiences happened that kind of brought it back up into like, oh, no, wait a minute. Maybe that is possible. So that's really what started it. I found a school it was over in Tampa, but the majority of it could be done kind of online at your own pace since I was working full time and working out with the trainer 5 days a week. I mean, I just didn't have a lot of time to actually go to a school physically. So it worked out perfectly that I could kind of do it whenever I had spare time. And then every 7 or 8 weeks, we had to go for a 3-day weekend in person to get feedback and practice and stuff like that. So it was a great balance of just learning about it and then also being able to practice it and do it and feel comfortable with it. And I'll tell you another kind of little leash that came up around that was knowing that I had been very left-brained and logical and analytical for much of my life. This at first felt very kind of right-brained and woo-woo to me. And I thought, God, am I kidding myself that I can do something like this? Like I usually sit down and like figure things out and, have a use case or something that like explains this is the expected result. And I'm not going to know the expected result here. How am I going to help people when I don't really know how to get them there? But
yeah. And how do you get over that? Because that is a big leash to hold some people down. How did you get to the point where you could trust yourself and say, yeah, no, I'm doing this?
The thing that seemed to like make it sink in for me was when I was, one of the things we would do when we'd go for our in-person practicals, I think is what they called them, is we would practice on each other. Like I said, you'd either be the practice therapist or you'd be the practice client or you'd be an observer. So, because we only had like a couple of different rooms that we could do the hypnosis in. And there were, gosh, I think 10 or 12 of us. So usually you were observing, but every once in a while you got to practice being the therapist or the actual client. So as I was practicing as the observer, there were times when, whoever was the practice therapist got to a certain point with their practice client that I thought, oh, no, you have to keep going. Like I just had this, like, no, this
It
is
was
what you need
almost
to
like you
say
had
now.
some intuition about it.
Yeah. Which to me, I didn't see that as intuition at first. To me, it just seemed like logic or common sense. Right. And so that's when I realized what I've always thought was just logic for me, and that everything was like on the left side, could actually have been fueled by intuition.
Wow.
Because like how
And
many
that's
times
a
do
great
we say,
awareness.
yeah, and how many times do we say, well, that's just common sense, when the other person didn't have the same common sense? Maybe it's not as common as we thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
Wow.
so that was one of the things that really kind of let me, it helped to have it sink in that I could probably do this. Now, I knew I wouldn't be like 100% perfect and open doors for every client and make their dreams come true on the first try or something like that. But I also knew that nobody was doing that. Right. I mean, it's all about who gets drawn to you, because of either how you're promoting yourself or how you carry yourself or just how you interact with people. Those are the people that are going to get drawn to you, and you're going to be able to help them for those same reasons, basically. So that was really what helped me get over that leash, is having the realization that there is actually some intuition going on. I'm not, because I really did, anytime I was around people that were just creatives or into more kind of the soft skills, artists.
Yeah, you felt that wasn't you.
Yeah, like it couldn't be. I mean, I'd been an athlete. Now I did, like when I was in school, I did choir and stuff
Now,
like that.
what's
But
really interesting to me though is that you didn't see yourself as creative, and yet you can pull out lyrics. You have like this what is that guy's name? Weird Al. You have like this Weird Al mind that comes up
yeah,
with these lyrics to songs. Now you had to have been doing that back then, and you just didn't see that as creative?
I didn't. It's funny
Isn't that
because yeah, I
interesting?
did that at
Yeah.
Harris. Probably, I don't know if Harris was the first time I did it, but I know there were several times while I was at Harris that just weird things would be happening, like either in the world or on our program or something. And I would just, I'd be talking to somebody else on the program team, and something would come up with that would make me think of a song. And then I thought, oh, what if we change the lyrics of that song? It would like make sense for the issue that we're laughing about right now. Let's just make people laugh. I'll just write this song and it'll make people laugh about it instead of being frustrated with it. And yeah, I started doing it back then, but it's still, to me, I mean, there's part of me probably that realized it was creative to do that. But
you were
when the
telling
lyrics came to
yourself
me, it
you
just kind of
weren't.
made sense.
But you were telling yourself you weren't. And
Right.
as long
Because
as
I
you were
felt like it
telling
made
yourself,
sense. So
yeah, but as long as
it
you were
was
telling
logic.
yourself you weren't creative, you weren't seeing yourself as creative.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. It was almost like I didn't feel like you could be both. And there was so much of me that was on the logical, analytical side that I didn't think I could kind of straddle the fence and also be creative and artistic or whatever. So that was definitely something that I had to kind of overcome. And it was just a matter of recognizing that when I saw something that seemed logical to me, like this is the next step, this is what you need to ask them next, and they would just like end the questioning or go a different direction. I'm like, no. I thought, oh wait, that was my intuition telling me that, because it's not something I was taught, because they were taught the same thing and it didn't come to them. So I started to like expand my definition of intuition or
Right.
creativity or whatever, soft skills, basically, to go, oh, I guess I do have some of that. So that that it was important that that happened while I was still in school, I think, in hypnotherapy school, because that would have been pretty difficult for me to keep the confidence up that I could have my own practice and do this and, make money at it and do it for a living.
Well, validation is so important, and I think that's one of the things that's so wonderful about community, is because community can help you have some of that validation before you have the personal validation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that personal validation is everything, and it can tear you up when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so, if you had gone and then nothing had changed, you still weren't able to eat your vegetables, or, if the fact that you had validation helps you to
Mhm.
continue moving forward,
Yeah.
most
Yeah,
likely.
because it wasn't just blind faith at first. There are times now, like another thing that was probably challenging about making that transition from working at a desk, 5 days a week, getting a paycheck, everything was kind of the same when you went in, that kind of thing. You knew what to expect, to now I don't get paid unless I have clients coming through the door. Holy shit. That's a whole different deal.
It's
Like,
a whole different deal.
it was a very different deal, and one that I had not seen in my life. Like, nobody in my family was entrepreneurial. They were all more like toe the line, go be a worker.
Now
You know,
that's a big deal to pull away from what has traditionally been done in your family. I mean, for
yep.
me to be an entrepreneur, it's not a big deal in my family because we have a lot of entrepreneurs in my family.
Hmm.
But to be an entrepreneur when you haven't had any example of entrepreneurship in your family, that's tough. And how do
Yeah.
you get the chutzpah to do that? I mean, there had to be
It
something that
was
was
tough.
gnawing at you for you to be able to break out of that
Yeah.
routine.
Well, and that kind of bridges us into the other thing that I wanted to talk about, in terms of leashes, because
Yeah.
uh, my family, I've not been abused. There's been nothing traumatic in terms of my childhood, my upbringing. My parents supported me. We didn't, we were never homeless. We always had food on the table. Like, there was nothing hugely
Yeah,
traumatic about it.
and that's fantastic, yeah.
Right. But even with that, there still can be leashes that come from the situation of your upbringing. One of those leashes, and it's not that I blame, this is not about blame or anything. It's just
No, 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 no.
realizing it, recognizing it. Um, and this was actually something that came up, I realized, probably more than anything, in some of my hypnotherapy training. They talked about how even the conditions around your birth can affect your personality. Meaning, and not that it's always this way exactly, but there can be an effect on your personality if there's a lot of stress going on for your mother, either while she's pregnant with you or as part of the delivery process.
Well, let me ask you a
Because,
question that's going along with
sure.
this, because, um, Elizabeth and I were talking about this offline, our guest last week, and we were talking last week about how it's not just the circumstances of the birth, but it's also, you know, because that mother is carrying half the DNA of her mother, and what that mother was going through in her lifetime and
Yep.
for birth, and then that mother in her lifetime and her birth, all of that gets imprinted on the DNA and gets
Hmm.
passed on. And part of that, kind of that generational trauma, but you also get the generational history.
Yep.
And have you experienced that in your practice? I mean, do you recognize that? Do you see that? Do you talk about that?
I do. In fact, that example, or that understanding or awareness that even something like that can affect your personality or how you react to things, I tell that to many of my clients. 'Cause one of the things that I ask my clients, and they're kind of like, "Why the hell do you care about this?" is, where are you in the birth order? Like, do you have
Mm,
siblings? And where are you in the birth order? Because sometimes all it takes is knowing that they were the firstborn, because more often than not, the firstborn, there's going to be more nerves and anxiety around that first experience of going through labor, right? It's not always the case.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's something going on medically in a later pregnancy or whatever that maybe was even more anxious than the first one or whatever. But sometimes
So what
that's at
was
least enough to open that door and help them to go, huh, maybe that's why I'm this way. Maybe that's what's caused me to be that reactive about things or whatever. So yeah, I talk to my clients about this quite often. And for some people, the way they described it that really caught my attention in hypnosis in the hypnotherapy school I went to was that when you think about the fact that if a pregnant mother's on drugs, of course, the drugs can affect the fetus. We know that.
of course.
But even if there's no drugs involved, cortisol is what we generate when we're stressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be like a drug that can affect the fetus as well. They also talked about it from like the energetic perspective of stressful energy obviously is more like, shaky nerve, like waves that aren't predictable kind of thing. And calm energy is lazy river, glass like lake or whatever. And so if you as a fetus even were around that more nervous or anxious energy, it's possible that, even from the get-go, you can come out being like, okay, everybody calm down, like being that peacekeeper type of mentality where you just want everybody to be happy. Like, let's not rock the boat. I've had enough of this, like already. Let's just be good and peaceful and calm. Everybody get along. And that can kind of inform your personality, how it develops.
Right.
It definitely, like I said, it's definitely not always just the firstborn that's that way, but sometimes that can be part of what helps explain it. And certainly, as an adult, I certainly didn't understand this as a kid, but as an adult, I became more aware of the conditions around when I was born. I knew that mom was in labor for like 24 hours or something when she had me. And then they did an emergency C-section because because I was, instead of my chin being tucked, I was like looking where I was going, I guess. Like, get me out of here. So that was, I'm sure, very traumatic, very stressful for her. But also
it's just
prior
crazy
to
that all gets imprinted on the baby's brain.
Yeah. And prior to that, even while she was pregnant, my dad had lost his job. So they didn't even have an income for a while. She had already quit her job to have, because she was that far along or whatever. He lost his job. So they didn't even have an income. Like, what the hell are we going to do? How are we going to afford a kid? We don't even have an income like that. I can't even imagine going through that myself. So again, it's not a blame thing at all. It's just recognizing.
So you found that you had all of this stress and anxiety and you didn't understand where it came from. Is that what you're saying? I
don't think it showed up that way for me. The thing, I do think it really created my personality to be one that felt like, okay, don't rock the boat. Like, I was a good kid. I didn't get in trouble. The other thing was I was brought up Catholic, and that Catholic guilt, like, sunk its teeth into me. So I didn't there's some people I know that rebel against that. I was not a rebel. I was a good kid. I didn't drink until like my senior year in high school. I had no drop of alcohol other than if they had wine at church or whatever. Like, that was the only thing I'd ever been exposed to.
You and I were very similar that way because I grew up the good girl. I was the good girl. I was supposed to be the example for my sister kind of thing. And yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And so, even that on its own is enough to have made me feel like I need to do what's expected of me. Hence, I'm good at math. Let me do the accounting, or let me go into engineering because that's even a little more challenging. I always try to stick with, okay, this is what's expected. Go work for a company, make a good income, blah, blah, blah. And so honestly, one of the things that helped me break that leash was moving pretty far away. I had to put some physical distance between
So
myself,
before
my parents.
we get into that real quick, before we get into that,
Yeah.
what were the negative effects? What kind of negative effects were you having as a result of this? I mean, why did you want to break it? I mean, what is so wrong about being the nice girl? I mean, I know.
Yeah. Well, for me, one time I realized I was actually walking my dog one night and I thought, you know what? I don't even know what I want. It was a
Mm.
dog that I knew was getting close to, I was going to have to put him down soon. And I'd always either adopted just what was available or helped a friend out that, hey, I can't take care of this dog anymore. Can you take it? Sure, I'll take it. I love dogs. I'd never actually taken the time even to get clear on what kind of dog do I want? What
Yeah.
size, what breed, what characteristics. I would always just take, oh, yeah, let me help you out. Yeah, I'll take him. No problem.
Because nice girls aren't supposed to think about themselves. Nice girls are supposed to twist themselves up into pretzels to make sure that nobody else feels put upon,
Yeah.
stressed. It's all supposed to be yours because you're the
Yep.
nice girl. Yeah.
And in addition to that, I would take that even a little bit further and say, I think I must have had a sense that certain things that I wanted to do felt
Mhm.
overwhelming, probably to my mom mostly because she was, I mean, she was a stay-home mom, so she was the one around most of the time. If I
Sure.
had an idea of wanting to do something, she was the one I had to run it through. So there were things, I mean, I remember probably sometime in school, either late elementary or middle school or something like that, where I was doing my homework and I might have had a question about something or I was explaining something that I was doing and she was like, I don't even understand that. Like, and not that she was stupid by any means, because
Yeah.
education keeps going up. There was stuff I didn't understand about my stepson's schooling that I'm like, why are they teaching it this way? I don't even know what they're trying to
Yeah.
teach.
Yeah.
But as a kid, hearing her say that, I thought, ooh, I don't want to make her feel uncomfortable. I got this. I don't need to bug her about it. I can handle it. So I kind of had this feeling of I can take this. I can handle more, put more in my bucket. I got room so that your buckets don't overflow. You know what I mean?
Oh. Yeah, because of your empathy.
Yeah. Which I didn't even know what
So,
that was at the time.
yeah, but nice girls get caught up in that trap too of, the empathy is just off the charts, and so we put ourselves aside to take care of somebody else and take care of somebody else's need. And after a while, that that can be taken advantage of, not necessarily on purpose.
Right.
Some people do take
Hmm.
advantage of it on purpose, but sometimes it just starts becoming expected,
Yep.
because nice girls will take care of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. And even I do remember one situation, not that I was, some angel and never did anything wrong, but I did not get in trouble much. But I do remember one time because I was so, it was so important to me for people to just get along and not even argue or fight or whatever. There was one time when my younger brother was getting into an argument with some kid from down the street. And it was like they started to physically fight, like in our driveway. And I was like, no. And so I grabbed my brother by the arms, like, by his elbows and pulled him back,
Yeah.
thinking, well, that will get him out of danger. I don't want there to be a fight. But the other kid just kept coming at him. So all I did was disable my brother.
Yeah.
And he got scratched all up by this
Oh
kid
my
from down the
god.
street. And I was like, and I'm sure, that stuck with him for a while too. Sure, he doesn't think I was some like peacemaker because I just made him. He's like, peacemaker, what the hell? But that
Oh
wasn't
my
my intent.
god.
My intention was stop the fight and be like non-combative or whatever. So I'm just trying to pull him away from it. But the kid just kept coming at him. So it
So
backfired. So it's not always
yeah.
perfect, but
No, but you were saying, so you had this dog and you were thinking about getting a
oh,
dog and you didn't know what kind of dog you wanted, or?
well, yeah, I knew that this dog wasn't going to be around much longer. And so I thought, I don't know of anybody else that's looking to have someone adopt their dog. So what's my next dog going to be? And I realized I've never even sat down and thought about what I wanted.
Mm.
What would really work for
Do you
me?
don't you find that quite often in your practice, especially with women putting themselves aside and
Yeah.
not even knowing what it is that they like or enjoy?
Yeah. Especially probably more than anybody else, young mothers, people who
Yeah.
were young mothers, right? So they didn't get a chance to really figure out who they were before they had to start taking care of someone else.
Yeah. I
And
think it also happens where you get into a relationship too young, where you get into a relationship, and it doesn't even have to have kids. And I only say that because my very first relationship, I was engaged, and I remember when we broke up. Thankfully, we broke up, and I remember going to the store. It's like the Wiz or something back when the Wiz was around. I remember going to the Wiz and looking through the CDs and thinking to myself, picked up a couple of CDs and I thought, I don't know if I like this. I know that Joe liked this.
mm,
I know all the music Joe likes. I don't know if I like this because I like it or because Joe likes it and that's why I like it. And it just blew my mind. Now this is,
yep.
30 years ago, but it blew my mind that I didn't know.
Yep.
Wow,
That's
just
a
mind-boggling.
scene from Runaway Bride with Julia Roberts that I remember more than probably just about anything else in that movie is when I think Richard Gere is the one that's like following her around and like doing an article about her. Something, why do you keep like leaving men at the altar? And he keeps asking, like he interviews the men that she's left at the altar and asks them, what is her favorite thing for breakfast? And each one of them tells him a different thing, and it happens to be their favorite thing for breakfast. So
Yeah.
when he finally asks her, what's your favorite breakfast? And it's just whoever she's with at that time, that's her favorite breakfast, whatever theirs was. And that was something that I think kind of started to make the light bulb come on for me as well. It's like, oh, wait. Yeah, you can have stuff that you think is your favorite, but have you really thought about, is it your favorite or is it just because that's what's there or what makes them happy?
And I think that's such a huge part. I know we're getting a little off topic here, but this is fascinating to me. I think that's one of the things that happens when you start talking about vibration and frequency. Because a lower vibration, a lower frequency is always that, well, how do I make this work? How do I make this fit? And every time you do, how do I, you're just getting smaller, smaller and smaller. How do I, and how do I make this work? How do I not get up? How do I not make you upset? How do I make sure that you don't criticize me? And you lose yourself.
Yep.
Just absolutely lose yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, I think, realizing that I couldn't even figure out what kind of dog I wanted, I also thought, God, have I ever even thought about what kind of relationship I wanted? Because I'd been single, I was single the vast majority of my life. And I thought, wonder if that's why I've never really ended up, in a relationship that meant something to me, because I haven't ever sat down and thought about what I really want. So
There's
it
a lot
wasn't
of
just
power
about
in
the
that.
dog. The dog made me aware of it. And then I thought, that's how other areas of my life are too. Even the job, like I talked about earlier, I only went into accounting originally because I was good at math and I was like meticulous. And then from there went to engineering. It did sound good to me, but with what I was doing just didn't still feel fulfilling. So, I had to continue to kind of unleash myself, I guess, as it's like layers of leashes or something that I had to continue to figure out to really get to where I felt comfortable, to where I wanted to be.
There's an interesting. I love this statement, and because you were talking about, it's unleashing yourself over and over and over again. And one of the things that Shamika Tankerson has said before is new level, same devil. So every time you get to a new level, oh, I'm at this new level. The biggest mistake you can make, and I made this mistake. The biggest mistake you can make is you get to the new level and you go, I've fixed that. I have I have left that behind. No, you haven't. You've just figured out a way to get past it more easily. You have strengthened your resolve against this thing that is still going to come back. It's just now you're going to be able to recognize it, hopefully more quickly, and get past it more quickly. So I think it's really dangerous, especially if for those of you that are watching that are starting your healing journey. I have many, 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 many years of therapy. And I wish somebody had told me way back when that the things that drag you down, they don't actually completely disappear. It just changes how they show up. It just constantly changes how they show up. You just get better and better about attacking them. And because I would get really upset. I'm like, oh, I thought I dealt with this. I get to a new level and be doing better. I'm like, oh, I thought I dealt with this. Yes, I did. But it's still there. There's like this remnant, this crumb that's still there, and it still shows up. You just deal with it more quickly. So sorry, I just want to throw that in there because I think that's so important to talk about when we're talking about how these things come up. And just because you break free from a leash that's keeping you stuck in your mind doesn't mean it won't try to sneak back.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Paula Abdul song, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or however it was, it's like that. And actually the other thing that popped into my mind when you were talking about that was, I remember back when that show, The Biggest Loser, was on, where they would have, people that were overweight go to the camp, Jillian Michaels, I think, and the somebody, or the trainers or whatever. And I didn't watch the show all the time, but I remember one specific episode that I saw really stuck with me. And what they had them do was, they were out like on a track, like football field with the track around it kind of thing. And they were having them do different kind of activities or challenges or something. And one of them was they had to pull this sled of various weights for different ones, depending on their situation. I don't know how far they had to pull it, all the way down the track, 100 meters or something like that. And these people were really struggling to pull that weight. And what they told them, at first they were like, are you kidding me? I can't pull that. Like, Jesus, that's just ridiculously heavy. And in reality, the weight that was on each of their sleds was the amount of weight they had lost since they'd been.
Wow.
Yeah. So just the different perspective, you don't realize how much you can be struggling with something until you can break free from it and look back and go, holy crap, I was carrying that every day.
Yeah.
Like that really made an impression on me, not just from like a weight loss perspective, but that can be applied to just about anything that feel, once you break free from it, you don't realize how restrictive something can be until you can look at it from a different perspective. It's almost like the opposite of the grass is greener on the other side. You don't realize how heavy something is or how difficult it is to get past until you get past it and then try to do it again. It's like, whew, I can't do that anymore. I don't have the energy to do that anymore.
Yeah. So learn it.
Yeah. Learn it and keep the momentum going forward.
Yeah. Keep the momentum going.
Back and pick it up again.
So we've talked about so many things. What is, if you could leave a message, if there's something that you just absolutely want the audience to know, to walk away and say, yeah, that's something that I needed from this conversation with Jenny. What is it that you want to let the listeners know?
Ooh, so like leash, bite, bark, like we did with Elizabeth last week. Yeah. And so let me, since we are kind of co-hosts of this podcast, we come up with this stuff together. I do want to kind of explain.
Oh yeah, please do.
This is another one where like I probably didn't give myself the creativity like credit for for coming up with the idea.
You absolutely
originally,
do.
but
And while you explain this, I'm going to go turn my air on because it's getting hot in here.
okay.
So please explain.
All right. So, as we were talking about things that we wanted to make kind of memorable about the podcast, for some reason, the idea of having just sort of like a mic drop moment, or this is your takeaway. This is, if you weren't able to listen to the whole podcast, then this is the thing that really is critical for you to keep in track or keep in mind. And the idea of kill, marry, fuck, that game that people play. I used to play with the guys that I went to lunch with at Harris, the other engineers. But basically in that case, they'll name 3 people and you have to decide which one you would kill, which one you would marry, which one you would fuck. And that doesn't really fit into the goal or the intention of our podcast. But I thought, well, we could do a play on that. And what if we did leash, bite, bark? So what's your leash? What was the thing that was leashing you back? If you could just boil it down to like a one word or like a simple concept. What was your leash? What was your bite? How did you get out of it? And then what's your bark? What's your message? What's your lesson learned from it? So for me, I would say in what we've been talking about today, because there's more leashes I could talk about, but
Oh my goodness.
The leash really is kind of like what you said earlier, Deidre, is that idea of being the good girl, of being the one that kind of just is always placating or pleasing and not trying to rock the boat or go out of the lines or whatever. That was my leash. I felt like that was my
girl
role.
syndrome.
Yep.
I was having a meditation the other morning and it came to me as I was thinking about the word nice, that nice is actually an acronym for not in conscious existence.
Yep.
Yeah. No more nice girl. Kind, but no more nice girl.
Right. Yeah. And I can't wait to talk about that because you've got a lot of good things to say about that. And so I think for me, what my bite was really kind of making the decision. I had to just decide that I was going to remove myself from the setting that kind of cultured that be the nice girl thing, that small town Midwest, be the good girl, the good Catholic girl that doesn't actually do anything rebellious or whatever. So I moved away. I physically removed myself from that situation so that I could kind of get a fresh start.
I think that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes that is absolutely necessary. There are times when you just need to physically get up and go. I find that sometimes with work. I can't just sit here. Sometimes I have to get up and get into a different situation. But we just did that ourselves where we moved from Palm Bay to Durham. And sometimes you just have to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Why can't I make things work here? No, if you've got to move, go. So if you've got to remove yourself to make things better for yourself, why not? So please continue. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And so I think to kind of boil it down in terms of the bark, what would be my lesson learned or my message is that it really is important to be true to yourself. We all have to, figure out how to be our best selves, because we can't be our best somebody else. I mean, that's not even a thing. You can't be someone else. So the whole purpose, I think, of existing on this planet in this time is to figure out who you are, what's important to you, what your contribution is, and do it. What was the video you had a few weeks ago? Do it now.
Just do it. Do it now.
I was like, all right, damn it, I'll do it. Shit, give me a break. Leave me alone.
Just do it. my uncle Roach says, I'm doing it.
Yeah. So that's really the key, I think, is just trust in knowing it's life is not about trying to please everybody. It's not about trying to be who other people think you need to be. It's really about figuring out your role, your position in the world. What is it that you bring that's unique and different? And
for some people, I've talked to some people and they're like, well, of course, that's exactly how I am. Awesome. That is so awesome for you. It really, really is. But for others of us who grew up being the good girl, being the nice girl, being praised for being the nice girl, and this is also huge coming out of religious institutions, because that's absolutely praised to, follow all the rules and, deny self. And so it's praised for you to lose yourself. That's not the point, I don't believe, but that's kind of what happens. You lose yourself.
Mhm.
And I know that's one of the people that we're going to have on, Amber Power. We're going to have to record hers because she can't come
Mhm.
here on a Friday, but we're going to talk with Amber about that as well, because she was
Yep.
actually in a cult when she was young, and how that affected her life. So absolutely. Thank you so much. This was really great, Jenny. Leash,
Thanks.
bark, bite, and how we all get stuck in our own heads. And yeah, sometimes it's perspective. Sometimes you just have to move, but all of it boiled down to, what I heard is, everything boiled down to decisions, right? You made a decision, you checked something else, you made another decision, and you kept making decisions. And I think that that's really important to bring
And
up.
taking action,
Yes.
right? I mean, I could have made a decision and then not moved to Florida.
And then not taking action. True. So yeah, making a decision and then taking action, and
Yep.
taking it quickly. I know that one of the things that has brought me down before is when I don't take action quickly enough, and then it just kind of wears on you. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah. We don't have time to talk about that today.
Have time to talk about that. But this was fantastic, Jenny. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure we get the leash, bark, bite up on. No, sorry, leash. Yeah, I did. I said it right that time. Leash, bite, bark. Yeah, leash,
Nice.
bite, bark up on the description for the episode. So, well, thank you so much. Next week we're going to interview me. So, yeah.
In the hot seat. Oh, and let me just point out, I know my face is probably a little more rosy than it was last week, but that was because I made it to the beach twice this week.
Hey.
So like a little vitamin D situation going on.
I am going to the beach this weekend.
Oh,
we're going to
yay.
do a continuation of my birthday celebration. My birthday was last week, as
That's
you
right.
know. Thank you so much for my happy birthday on the last episode. And so this week I get 1 week. So we're going to the beach. I wanted to go last week and we just couldn't make it. So we're going to go to the beach this weekend. I'm very, very much looking forward to that. So maybe I'll be a little rosier.
There you go.
Next week. But thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Deidre Beecham with it's just DeidreBeecham.com, and Jenny with hypnohuddle.com, and also Epic Renewal.
Yep. EpicRenewal.com. The other one. Yep.
And EpicRenewal.com. So thank you so much for coming and joining us. Please join us next week. We want to help you each and every single week. Our goal is to help you to get unleashed from all that crap that is in your head, because that's where it is, and it doesn't need to be there. It just doesn't need to be there. So thank you so much. Anything you want to add, Jenny?
No, I just think, the more people can see themselves in others that have maybe gone through the process or have overcome something, the more easier it is for them to see that it's possible for them. Like we were talking at the beginning, when you can get some kind of evidence based information, it makes it a little easier to take action and to make movement in a direction. So, sharing the podcast so that other people can watch it. That's even what I tell my hypnotherapy clients.
Yeah.
I don't ask you to give me Google reviews. It doesn't, I don't need that for like my ego or whatever. But what I ask people to do is share your experience, because surely there will be someone out there that will see it either on my website or Google or wherever, and they'll connect with it, and it'll help them realize maybe this will be helpful for them as well. So same thing with the podcast. Honestly, share it, tell people about it. Because even if it didn't completely, line up and fit into your boxes, it may be something that helps a friend or family member that you know.
And also, if there's something that you want to ask us, or there's a topic that you want us to address, we will find the right guest for it. Right now, we're finding guests that we find interesting, that we think have great unleashed stories. But if there's something specifically you're looking for that is more closely related to you, and that there's some kind of leash you're trying to figure out how to bust through, let us know and we'll find a guest that will help you out.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Or if you think
Anything
you
else?
have
We're
a
good?
good unleashed story, you could be a
That's
guest
right.
on the
That's
pod
right. You
too.
could be a guest too.
Maybe we
Yeah,
find
and
you.
we'll get that's right. And we're going to have our guest page up by next week. We'll have that up so we can put that up there so that you can apply to be a guest. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. And well, of course, you're always here, Jenny, but I appreciate you being the guest interview this week. I think it was fantastic. And I look forward to next week.
Ditto.
And getting everybody unleashed AF. Take care. Where's the music? Let's cue the music. There's too much music here. Cue the music. There we go.
Trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed. I'm done trying to